Sorry that I keep on leaving. I'm cooking my dinner for work, and
That's all right. All right, so we're ready to go. So what's going on in the case, and what are the root problems?
so I guess with Mary Griffin, it's that York guy who doesn't know how to treat his employees
Yeah,
in a professional manner.
yeah,
I think that's a big part of it. I think part of it is just a lack of experience. He excelled when he
Mhm.
worked on his own or he had supervision, but once he was responsible for supervising someone else, it reminded me of the pace setter style of leadership that we were reading about, that he expects everyone to do it exactly the way he does it as well as he does it, and they may have different strengths. And he
Mhm.
really embarrassed his employees in that meeting.
and the when the plant manager or the production manager, he freaked out on him too. Like that's not a seems like it could cause a lot of problems on a real professional way to, take in that or to like correct the problem instead of just like getting mad about it. So.
Definitely. I know that's a big faux pas. I mean, I'm a mom, but if someone kind of encroaches on my territory, I'm like, this is my area to supervise. It's not exactly the same, but we all have our little areas we're responsible for, and we want to be responsible for them. This production manager wanted to be responsible for his staff, and he didn't like someone else coming in, issuing corrections that should have gone through the proper channels through him if there was a need for correction.
Definitely.
You know what? It actually brought me back to our last case study that we just did, the one that was in Brazil, Simco.
Mhm.
Managers, and there's that one manager who got like a 40%. And then they went in and checked out, and it turns out he was like awesome at sales, but he's a terrible manager. So they just moved departments. So like I feel like this guy is kind of like a similar situation. Like
Yeah.
But maybe
Sorry, Dan, you're cutting out. But yeah, I think I agree with Dale. Like, it makes sense. The guy exceeded. He's really good at what he did, but then when he got put into a management position, like he was good at what he did before, but he doesn't quite know how to be a manager.
Yeah.
All right. So, how should Mary Griffin respond to the situation with Simon York?
Well, I feel that she's already kind of messing up with how they set up the meeting. It was kind of like a vague meeting. I think it should be important that York knows what they're going to be talking about, so he can be prepared, to talk as well. Nobody wants to be ambushed.
Yeah.
So I feel like it needs to be direct, and I feel like it's setting it up how the way they did might cause some issues because he's expecting to talk about the brand and all this stuff, but she wants to talk about something else that might be hurtful to him.
No, I agree with you.
That's a really good point. Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, it is.
I think Tom hit it right on the head. Like he's gonna come in thinking this is another presentation, a chance for me to shine, and she's gonna be trying to correct him.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet based off of that, she's probably not gonna be able to correct him without him either being upset or she's just not gonna be able to do it. Like the atmosphere just won't be right. So the first thing that she needs to do is maybe have her assistant or call him herself and be like, we're going to talk about your behavior about this situation. This is what we need to, there's some things about the way you're going about things that aren't working well. So that way he comes in humble, ready to listen, like, okay, I know I need to change some things.
Yeah.
I think it'd also be important to talk about what his strengths are when he was doing it. Otherwise, he's just going to feel attacked the entire time.
Yeah, exactly. Like the feedback presentation, it said like describe what their actions are and not them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
specific.
I think you're right about the letting him know what the actual meeting's going to be about, because you're right, he'll feel ambushed, and then and if he doesn't get upset about it, like he has that first initial minute to be like, to vent, and then come into the meeting with a little more cooler head and a better perspective than being ambushed, and then get prepared for that, then you just get heated. So
Yeah, because it's easy to get defensive when they attack your character.
Yeah.
So if it comes out of nowhere, it's even easier to just get super defensive.
Yeah,
I agree.
sure.
I think it's also really important that they not attack his character, that they focus on his actions. So I think that
Exactly.
would also be key, since they didn't talk about what the meeting was about, that you really focus on the behavior and the consequences of the behavior rather than character, and make sure to separate the two. You mentioned to him the things that he's doing really well and that you want him to grow as a leader rather than seeing this as this is the end of your career.
Yeah. Well, because, actions are fact. What happened, but to put intent to what he was doing, that's all this assumption. So exactly, focus on the behavior that he did instead of saying, hey, you're a jerk, you need to fix that.
Yeah.
Okay. And then should Griffin have corrected Simon the first time there was a problem after he criticized his team? Everyone, why or why not?
Yes, it would have nipped this problem in the bud and helped him be able to redirect his energy in a way that would be more positive and effective and come out with a better product overall. When people are upset in the workplace, they're not able to work to their fullest potential. And if this is just a continuing growing problem, it's going to impact the product.
Yeah, I also think that when I have a hard time like realizing what I do wrong, and if I continue to do it, it becomes a habit. But if somebody tells me the first time, that means I can change it. And that means that something else can happen further along.
And I think she should have done it like right after the meeting or like when it first happened. But I would have called him out right then and there. Maybe like after the meeting, like, hey, we have to sit down and talk about it then instead of like waiting. But
yeah, because she said she noticed there was something up, so she should have acted on that.
Yeah, like it says, she looked at you could tell that the team members wanted the meeting to be over. I think she said it like they were all super uncomfortable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe there's more going on. Maybe a good idea would be to talk to his team members. What are their thoughts on him? How's he doing? What's he do? Because she's got one feedback from one guy, so only one guy's complained.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe there's a bunch of other coworkers who are upset with him, and maybe there's a few things that need to be addressed in those assets as well. If she just addresses the product manager, then he might better his relationship with them. But if he's not treating his team well, that whole department's gonna go down the toilet.
It was like the reading last week from the Speed of Trust, like trying to get something done when you don't trust someone, because if your boss you think is going to freak out on like tiny mistakes, you're not really going to trust to take him to anything to him. And, that's a recipe for inefficiency. Give an example of a situation when you were given poor correction and what were the results and how did it affect you?
Well, I just think, I work at a theater and it gets really busy, and sometimes, some of the managers are a little heated and they say things they shouldn't, and you just take it personally, and like, I want to work less, I get frustrated, and sometimes I'm frustrated with the guests I get at the theater. Like, it doesn't work well for anybody.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any of us that haven't received correction at some point or another, and the way it's delivered really makes a big difference. If they point out things that you can change or things you can quantify, like behavior, it's easier to feel like this is the path toward a solution. But when it's been done poorly, you just feel badly about yourself and don't really want to be there, that what you do doesn't make a lot of a difference. And I think it makes for a much less motivated worker, family member, volunteer, in whatever situation you're in.
Yeah. So my time in the Army definitely is like there's a lot of people get into leadership positions who really aren't prepared for that. And instead of giving there's, that culture of just, you mess up once, they're going to make you do push-ups or whatever, run, puke, front, back, go, whatever. So I have probably 1,000 of these examples, but there's been differences of having like a really good leader and a bad leader. my good leaders, they'll correct me, they'll fix the issue, take corrective action, and then everything goes on smooth and ready to go. But then there's been times, and as being the one corrected, I didn't take it properly. I just, and when I wasn't corrected properly, I was like, well, forget that guy. I'm not doing what he says. I'm not. But I think it can really, just when you do it poorly, it can really affect everything for the worse. Then give an example of a time when you received correction that motivated you to improve, and what the person did giving you feedback do. What did the person giving you feedback do?
Well, I have an experience when I was really study president. I got a call from the stake president, which is never a good thing. It's a little bit scary. And our bishop, he and his family were really sick, and I had offered to do things for them, but I wasn't really specific, and I was very new. And he'd said no, so I assumed they were fine. But he called, he asked how I was, he asked about my family, he asked if I was aware of the situation going on, and asked what I knew. I told him, and he gently encouraged me to do more, that I needed to be a little bit more aggressive in that sometimes people won't accept service. And the way he did it, I did not feel horribly that I had missed this and not stepped up, but I recognized that I could do more, and I did. And he just did it with kindness and love and respect, and was very clear about tangible things that I could do to improve the situation, and it was appreciated and a positive experience.
Yeah. One of my sorry, I hate talking about the Army, but that's just where I get a lot of feedback from. But one of my old platoon sergeants, when I first became a team leader, my team leader got pregnant, and then because of the Army regulations, she couldn't do anything. So I had to take over the team and start doing stuff. And I was pretty new to the Army, hadn't really been groomed for this position, and I was really ineffective at it. And I sat down with my platoon sergeant, pulled me into his office, started talking to me about it. He's like, he listed things that I'd been doing well, and then we went over things that I needed to improve on. And just sitting down and listening to what I needed to work on and he gave me he gave me a bunch of different options, hey, this is what I would have done, but you're not me, so you need to figure out your own way of getting it done and making your team work as a well-oiled machine. But it was exactly what I needed, to sit down and get a little bit better perspective about how I needed to be treating my team, and a way to motivate them. So.
I love that when he gave you correction, he said, you're not me, but this is what I would have done, but you need to find your own way of doing it. So that goes right into the speed of trust. You felt trusted. That even though he was correcting you, you felt trusted that you could still make the changes that you felt like you needed to make, that you would need to decide how you were going to change it, what you were going to do. And maybe that's the best way. That should be the overall message when we get edified, or we get corrected, or we're correcting someone else, is at the end, what they feel is trusted. They feel trusted to make the changes. They feel trusted to be successful. They feel trusted that they were corrected, but they feel like they can trust you and you trust them. That should be the feeling that we leave with. So thanks for sharing that. That was cool.
Yeah, no problem. And I really did leave. I never had someone have more impact on my. I have a leader have more impact on my life than he just really, he trusted me to get whatever I needed to get done, and I trusted him to provide the means that I could get done. So.
I think a key in that was having the support of the person who corrected you, that he wanted you to succeed. He was trying to give you tools to succeed, gave you suggestions, but again, let you do what you felt was best and trusted you to grow and improve.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the scripture that says when there's feedback, that you should show a greater increase of love, and that's why it builds that trust and that friendship between each other.
All right, and then so Name 2 principles that stood out the most to you from the feedback workshop and how you apply them. I really liked the don't describe them, describe what they're doing. So you're not criticizing them, you're just, you know, helping them change the action, not them as a person.
Yeah, I agree a ton. And to be specific where, you know, you gotta, if you let it just linger on and beat around the bush, it's not gonna get anywhere. So be specific and not attack their character. I agree.
Yeah. And then another one was the 4 guidelines they had for formulating feedback. It was be direct, identify specific behaviors, state impact, and caution. I think that's really good guidelines to go to, because there's nothing worse than someone trying to give you feedback and they're too scared or nervous of your reaction to be direct about it. You know, they're just super like cautious, and they just, you know, they kind of beat around the bush and think be direct is probably the best thing you can do. You know, and then that goes right along with the specific behavior. You know, except they're not going to give you that. They give you really vague feedback. You can't really change what, you know, you don't really know what they're looking for.
Yeah, I agree with you. Along with the lines of specific behavior, just looking for specific behavior rather than putting labels on people. Like earlier, well, I don't remember who it was, but someone said, you know, don't tell the guy who you did, that he's a jerk. You know, you tell him that you did this. You look for the observable behavior and you identify that. And that is just a more positive way, because people can change what they're doing. They can't always change someone's perception of them, except through what they do. They need to have something specific to work on to change the environment, their actions, the situation, and things like that.
Yeah, I like that. So, anyone else want to throw in something? There are things they got from the feedback workshop.
I thought that identify the specific behavior was really important, because if you don't know what's going on, how to change it, then that's not going to do anything.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then how we apply them. I mean, I don't think everyone. I mean, I think it's good to have these principles and qualities to you know, give feedback, but we're not really in a position to. I mean, most people aren't in a position to have to give back feedback on a daily basis, you know. But I think if they just take some of these and really let them into leadership styles and in anything, you know, home life, church, work, you know, it'd be really helpful in the end.
I found that this workshop was really helpful in helping me quantify the things that have been more successful for me as a parent or as a leader in volunteer organizations or at church, and then recognizing why some things weren't successful. You know, just putting a label on it and recognizing that there is a little bit more of a formula than I thought. But especially with my children, I have a teenager and then 3 adult children, and teenagers are really hard. And I have one child who is very stubborn. I jokingly say that if I had him first, he would have been my last. He is a great kid, but he is so stubborn. He does what he wants when he wants, and I have to be very careful about the way that I talk to him about things. With my other children, it's not that I didn't take care with my words, but they were a lot more easygoing. And so if I wasn't perfect in the way I said things, they understood what I was saying and we could have a good conversation. With this child, I cannot. And so I found that a lot of things they talked about, observable behavior, and then focusing on that. And then also I was struck by them talking about giving positive feedback, you know, point out things that they do well. With him, that really helps. Pointing out what he does well, talking about an observable behavior and what he thinks about it. Then we work on coming up with a solution together where he's ultimately responsible for the solution, and then reinforcing my love and admiration for these qualities and the things that he does that are positive, that it's received much better than if I just said, I can't believe you're not doing the dishes. Why does your room look like that?
Yeah.
You know, It just works a lot better, and having him be responsible for implementing the solution rather than me.
Yeah. So I was just looking at some things for this, and I messed up my first week as being a leader. So I think what we did was good, but I should have invited someone to offer a prayer, and so I went over those questions, but I messed up. There's like a here. I'll share this so you guys can see the one when you guys are when we take turns being leaders, we'll know. So I messed up. I didn't look at this till just now. So we have this like little chart we need to go through, I guess. So for next time, we'll be able to start this a little bit better. But so we already covered all the issues. That was really important. We talked about the specific behaviors that York did. And then I guess we can go over the cultures at Derby Foods, because I don't think we really covered that. So what do you believe is the culture at Derby Foods? It's kind of hard to tell what the culture is from a 2-page, page and a half, whatever document.
I think that if we take a cue from the director of production coming to speak with the vice president, it seems like there's a culture of openness, that people work together, that they strive to do their best work, but that they are responsible for their workspace. That the director's reaction to York coming in and correcting was not received well. I don't think it would be in most areas, but that in general, there's a lot of communication. They have this meeting with the brand manager. They each talk about different things, and they have different ideas about things. And it sounds like there's a lot of good communication that goes on, a lot of positive support in helping fulfill their roles. And I think that's one reason why York's behavior is so disconcerting, is it really is not in that vein of positive communication and supporting each other.
Yeah. I think that's a really good way to look at it. Because I don't know if I had a problem with someone getting at me that I'd go to the vice president of the company to get it fixed. So I think that is a really good point, that it's a open door policy type company, very open.
I think it might also be that there's a direct line of command. He's probably a direct report for the VP. And so when you have a problem, you go to the person who's in charge. And so he goes to his boss to talk about what the problem is. And rather than going directly to the person, instead of going to York and saying, I can't believe you did this, or York went to his division, he went through the proper line of authority. And that's his boss. So to me, I might say I wouldn't go to the vice president, but the vice president isn't my boss. She probably is the boss for the director of production.
Hey, sorry guys, I have to head out, but next week I'll make sure to have a little more time.
That's fine.
Hey, well, it was great to meet you guys, and I'm excited for the semester.
Thanks.
Good, Tommy. See you.
See you, Tommy. Along with that point, I do see the open door policy totally with like John Shelbourne, who went and talked to Mary. Mary, like, what her reaction was by the way he was walking, she already knew there was a problem. That means that this isn't the first time that John's come up to talk about something. That means there's good communication there. That obviously John's come to her before to mention something. Maybe that's just John's personality, or maybe that's the culture of the business. It's that you go and you talk to the managers when you see something you don't agree with.
That's a pretty good point. I'd say that shows that they know their team. If someone's just walking up to you and you're like, oh man, they're mad, you clearly know who they are and what they're about, if you can tell just by the way they're approaching. I think that's a good sign that the company, even the higher ups, know who's working in their company. And then what do you think the guiding principles are for Derby Foods?
I think they want to succeed. One thing she talked about was that York had revitalized this brand that had been around for, I think it was 150 years, and brought in a younger audience. So I think their ultimate goal is that they want to succeed, but I think they want to succeed together without one star, that they all work well in their areas of expertise.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what do you think are the beliefs that support the culture? I think that, the beliefs, that was a tough one. I'd probably say, like the beliefs of just knowing that like a company can't run without everyone knowing their job top to bottom, and knowing that they can address, if there's an issue, that they can be confident enough that they can address it with a superior and not feel backlash,
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it talks about before York was a brand manager, when he was an assistant brand manager, he had a really good relationship with his manager, that he could suggest new ideas and new marketing ideas, but still respect that he was the leader. And so I think you're right about that people could communicate and speak out and do well in their position, and that's all part of their culture.
And then what are corporate politics, and how can they affect culture? Just like any job, you're gonna come across people who you don't like, or you don't think they deserve the job that they got. Someone got a promotion over you, or somebody who isn't as qualified in your opinion, and but someone higher up likes them, and I think it can really affect the way that your company is going if someone who's unqualified gets a job, and the subordinates don't feel like they're qualified to lead them. Then it goes right back to the speed of trust. Like it's going to be really efficient. They're not going to have a lot of support. Probably a lot of not necessarily trash talking, but like some problems at the lower end of the spectrum.
Well, I don't have a lot of personal experience with corporate politics. I do a lot with nonprofit, but my husband at work, he talks a lot about things. He worked in the film industry for a really long time, and interestingly enough, he worked on one project. It was Curious George, the movie. Mm-hmm. And he went in, and he and another guy, this is very early in production, were working on creating a new process for doing 3D and 2D work together. And so this other guy made the presentation to the executives, and they went with it, and they promoted this guy, which was fine. My husband didn't have a problem with that because he had such a great personality, but when it came to the work, he couldn't do it. And it ended up going so poorly that the person who had the bond, the insurance on the film, had to take over production and cut that guy out. And it was this huge thing because he presented himself well. And I think sometimes people work with the people they know or who present themselves well, which is part of the politics. But things don't always go as well when you go with the people that you know or that you like. You need to go with someone that you can trust and someone that's competent, as we read about in the book. And so it's just very interesting the way that different personalities mesh in the workplace, and just that people like to work with the people they know or the people they like. And that's sometimes good and sometimes not so good.
Yeah. And I can really see being an issue, because I know, and like when I first became a sergeant, started becoming in charge, there was a lot of people who weren't, a lot of specialists is the rank before sergeant. There's a lot of specialists who are all in line, and then when someone gets picked up, it feels like they're not qualified, and like I picked up sergeant pretty quick, and I probably wasn't ready for it when I first got picked up, and there was people who knew it, but to me that actually helped me become a better leader, because I'd sit down with my squad and ask them, and just communicate. But it can, there are the downsides to it, but it also can help that person become the person who gets promoted or whatever, step up and get into a better position, you know, and be a better leader. So there's, you know, that opposite end of the spectrum.
That reminds me of what we were studying last week about how the corporations work and how one of the importances was when the employees, when they felt like they were needed and that they were a part of the entire group.
Yeah. So what would you recommend to maintain, change, or build on the existing culture? So I would probably change that she didn't just address the problem. Like, I mean, like, I think she was right in not addressing it in front of everyone, but how she was being kind of aloof, you know, telling her secretary to talk to York's secretary to not really tell him what the meeting was about. That could be changed because, like Tommy was saying, no one wants to feel ambushed. But I think that their open door and like very approachable culture is very good and can be maintained. And then, yeah.
I think I'd like to extend that.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Dalen.
No, you're okay. Go, Ari.
Oh, thank you. Just extending the open door policy, that you can see that York probably doesn't have an open door policy with his employees. And so just to help teach him and coach him and mentor him, that he can create that culture within his department.
Yeah, I was even going to go along the same lines. Like, my advice, if I were talking to York, I'd say, hey, ask each of your employees to come in one-on-one and just ask them what you can do better as their manager. And kind of have that culture that the leaders learn, you know, we're all equal here. I'm here to help you out. What can I do better as your manager? What am I doing that you don't like? And maybe they're not the best at constructive feedback, but if they say something that kind of hurts you, you can generally find some kind of grain of truth in it. That they're like, okay, there's something there. There's something I did, some kind of behavior that caused them to be upset with.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, just opening up that open door policy to the point that the employees and managers can give each other feedback often to build each other up would be the overall purpose.
Yeah. So what, I guess we already covered how Mary should approach the discussion. What key items should she cover?
I feel like I've been talking a lot. Kelly or Dalen, do you have anything to say?
I guess she would really have to cover like what made the employee feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like bring up that point, but also talk about how he was doing well before he became the branch manager.
Yeah, do that. You know, like the rights. Like, this is what you're doing right. This is where you're successful. This is where where we can improve. I like that. I think another one should be just how. I mean, like, he didn't really like criticize his employee like I mean, I don't know, being like, oh, well, good thing this isn't a huge like an outsource, you know, but you could tell they're super uncomfortable. I mean, they probably, if you should know your team and know how they react to criticism. So if it was like a minor error, just, move on. It's not, not that big of a deal. No one's losing their life over it, just correct that for when the meeting is outside, or for next time. But I think he did. I mean, I understand it's like strive for excellence, but I don't know. It didn't seem like the meeting was, a huge, or it didn't seem like the error was a big enough problem for how uncomfortable the team members got.
It almost seems that he made the error worse, because he called out his team. He could have let it go, but then he talked about that this could be a career-ending move if someone else had been there. It could have been a little thing, oh, I'm so sorry, next time we'll proofread that. and then he moved on. Instead, he made it larger, and his team was visibly uncomfortable. I think in this opportunity with Mary correcting him privately, just point out that this was something that probably needed to be addressed, but privately and in proportion to what it was.
Yeah, I agree.
Right. I think even that quote by President Monson, he said, "Never let a problem be solved be more important than someone to be loved." And you could almost twist that just a little bit, just like never let one of these small details to be solved be more important than your employee feeling trusted and cared about by you. And so what he said something that worried me, and that was details are everything. Details aren't everything. If we focus on just the details, we could go to pots with this business. But it's like, if we focus on building our employees and we still make sure we have the good design, I get that you wanted the X bigger, but it's about how we go about it with our coworkers. It's all about how we present ourselves. And maybe just mention, what did you do to correct it? And he's like, oh, I went down there and I told them they were all doing everything wrong. It's like, well, it made them feel like this. It made them feel uncomfortable. It made them feel like you were stepping over a boundary. I'm not saying you were. That's how they perceive your behavior. So what's a better way you could approach it? And ask him what he could do better. Maybe, and if he can correct it himself, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I agree with you that asking him what he can do better is really good, because if he comes up with the solution, he's more likely to implement it and learn from it.
Yeah. Maybe it's just like someone just needs to present the problem to him and be like, hey, I noticed your team members didn't seem quite comfortable in the meeting, and this brand manager seemed uncomfortable with the way you presented yourself. What do you think the problem is, or what can you do to fix it? And that way he doesn't feel so much attacked because he's giving himself the feedback. And if he doesn't quite get it, you maybe give him a little nudge, some hints, like maybe you could try this. But just like Alex Leader did, but I'm not you. That's what I would do. But what do you think you could do to fix it?
I don't how many presentations have you sat through or have you done where there's been an error, but if they just, like there might be a minor error, but if they just don't point it out and just keep moving, some people probably won't notice the error, or, if you point it out and blow it up, then that's all that's going to be on their mind. Just like, oh yeah, they made a mistake, because, you've done, I don't know how many presentations you guys had to do for school or work, whatever, but, there's always going to be something. But if you sit there and point it out to everyone that you did make a mistake or that there was a mistake made, then that's all they're going to think about instead of just, continuing, going with the flow. They might not notice it, or they might think, oh, it wasn't that big a deal, and then forget about it. But when he blows it up that big, that's all anyone can think about. When Mary's like, oh, when she started to decide that she needed to make a discussion with, or to have a discussion with York, if she just would have, drive on, not pointed it out, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But that's, if you're making a big deal out of mountains out of molehills,
Yeah.
Sorry, where were we? Then how can Mary best reinforce the culture?
I think we've talked about that a little bit, about just teaching about the proper line of authority. You have, if you have a problem with that, please go to the head of production, and, reinforcing that we have a team culture where we support one another and we don't want our team members feeling horrible about things and their mistakes, correct them privately. Just teaching certain things that help maintain that culture, I think, would be helpful.
And so what are the most effective methods that Mary can use to make the discussion productive?
We definitely touched on that, starting with strengths, talking about behaviors, being direct. I think we've already kind of touched on all those aspects.
Yeah.
Giving examples of maybe ways he could go about it, and invite him, give him an invite. Will you try to do that? Will you try to do what you're saying? Will you do that? And then I think that'd be pretty effective.
No. Okay. Well, I think we pretty much covered them. So just like the key concepts, were the feedback, how to go about it, being direct, not describing York, but his actions, Geez, Lisa just went blank. You know, the four guidelines. But any other comments anyone has
About the case, or about us working as a group?
about the? Well, I guess we can. I was thinking more of the case, but yeah, we can. If you guys need to, we're supposed to set up our group leaders and stuff, but I think we just do it on that Google Doc that everyone has. If everyone sign up for a week.
I think everyone's set up to edit it, although some people don't. Tommy doesn't have a Google account under that email, so he may have to link it.
Got one of his emails that was right.
Oh, I corrected it in the Google Doc. There was a Z that shouldn't be in there, but that's okay.
Okay.
Does anyone want to volunteer to be a leader next week? I don't mind doing it if no one else wants to.
Yeah, we can just set up on this schedule. We could just do like we can set it throughout the weeks, and then just have everyone go through and put one they can do.
Yeah.
I think
we're each going to do it at least a couple times.
Do you get that extra paper? Because I didn't see that document that you were using.
yeah. So actually, I didn't notice it until I read like, hey, if you're this week's, here, I'll share it. I guess.
The group leader. There'll be a link to it in the contents. I don't know if it's in a separate group or in the same page.
So yeah, so it's on your like case study activity instructions. If you, all students do this, and then at the bottom it says if you're the week
leader. Oh, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, so it's right there.
Awesome.
That group's discussion.
Jalen, did we get to see your daughter? Is this your daughter?
Yeah, she's right here.
Very fun. Am I saying your name correctly? Is it Dalen? Oh, I think we might have lost him.
All right. Well, cool. Sorry. Next time I'm the leader, I'll have a little bit better. I'll be prepared a little bit better. I was in the middle of another group meeting with a different class, and like till 5 minutes before this one, so I'll be a little more prepared.
I actually think you did a great job, and I appreciate you being willing to step up at the last second and get this all together for us so that we can do it this week. Thank you.
Yeah, you did great, Alex.
Yeah, no problem. And then if anyone doesn't know how to use the Google Hangouts or to get this going, just send me an email, and we can actually we can do one of these and then set it up I'll like walk you through how to set it up. So
thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
Well, cool, guys. All right. Well, so we still need to set down a time every week. Are we going to plan on Tuesdays or?
That's what looked like it was the best for everybody when I was setting up the spreadsheet.
Okay.
I say if we can do Tuesdays at noon, if that works for everyone. If not, we can tweak the time. What I'll do is, if it's okay with everyone, I'll put it in the Google Docs that we're going to do it at this time. But if we need to change it, we'll change it. So you can always look there and know when it is, what day, what time. But we'll also notify anyone if there's a change. But unless anyone objects, I say we keep it at this time, unless we find it's a problem.
Okay, works for me.
Sounds good to me.
All right, cool, guys. Well, I'll stop the broadcast, and then I'll put it in our discussion board. So if we need to review it or look at it, or have any questions. But all right, well, cool, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks again.
Yep. See ya.